Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the major overhaul that has happened to the Breach League here, because it has really been shaken up, it's been turned on its head, and there is a lot of things which looks like you can do in both the early game, aka League Start, as well as end game. So if you've got your eye on an interesting and fresh new way to farm, or you're looking for something that might scale into the end game as a bit of a currency strategy, you are in the right place. We're going to cover the changes and talk about the potential of this league mechanic and the impact of what's going on here. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the most major change, which I want to highlight here for Breach, is actually around its scarabs. Now, if you're new to Breach, traditionally these scarabs went like this. Rusted would give you 1 additional Breach, Polished would give you 2, Gilded 3, and I believe Winged was 5. Essentially, Breach was thought of as basically a big battery for magic finding, as well as Delirium, and that was kind of just mostly what people used it for. Very recently, in the last league with the new Atlas passive, people started to use it for farming stuff like Skin of the Lords with the Chosen Divination card, as well as a ton of Breach Stones, which fueled people farming the Hidden and the Feared, but before that, it was pretty much mainly just like a mechanic, which was a battery for other mechanics. Now, you're going to see a major change here to these scarabs, which completely redefines the identity of Breach. So the Rusted Scarab is the same, but as soon as we get to Polish, we notice that we've gone from 2 breaches here down to 1. But now each breach contains an additional boss hand. Now, what is a boss hand? Well, it's essentially a rare hand in the breach, which is going to contain increased amounts of splinters. But in addition to that, it also has a chance to drop that Chosen Divination card, which gives Skin of the Lords. And that did end up being a major part of how much money Breach would earn you. In addition to that, there is an Atlas passive which causes these boss breach hands to spawn additional breach lords. So overall, additional breach boss hands is a big deal, and this follows the Legion mindset of kind of enhancing stuff in the map, not just adding more of it. So if it works out the way that we'd like it to, it's going to make breaches more rewarding on an individual level, and overall the mechanic should be more time efficient. Instead of doing 9 breaches in a map, you'll probably be doing like 3 or 4, but those ones that you do will be far more worth your time. Now, when we get to Gilded, we go from 3 down to 1. However, we do get the other effect of the Polished Scarab, in addition to also doubling all Breach Splinters from Breach hands. Now, I'm not entirely sure exactly how powerful this will be, due to the fact that a lot of the Splinters from Breach actually drop from the Breach Lords, as well as the Breach Monsters. But one thing I can say for sure is if all of the Breach Splinters which drop from these hands are in a big stack, this will increase the overall profitability of the mechanic and make it so that it doesn't feel so terrible when you don't get exclusively Chayula or Ulnator breaches, because you'll be looting like a 5th of a breach stone in some cases, hopefully, and that'll feel a lot better, and you'll be able to get a lot more of those lower tier breach stones as well as the higher ones, because it'll actually show up on your filter and it'll be worth it to click it. Now, when we get to the Wing Breach Scarab, we only get 2 breaches now instead of 5, so it's over half the breaches, but we can see here that we do have the other modifiers on there as well. So it's clear that they're placing much more emphasis on quality over quantity. So what are the impact of these breach changes on the scarabs? Well, the mechanics that were using breach as a battery, namely magic find strategies as well as delirium strategies, will have substantially less breaches to do so with. They will not gain as many free monsters to fuel that playstyle, to fuel that magic find, to fuel those delirium rewards. Now, I can say from my experience doing delirium, you only really went up to polished breach scarabs, and you could get away without using them at all and just go with rusted. Now, of course, you do lose the option if you needed them to go for that, but overall, I don't think it's going to impact Delirium Orb farming strategies too much. I think where it's really going to hurt is people playing in groups, especially ones that are using the Winged Breach Scarabs. Pretty much no solo player used these as a solo, farming breaches. It just was never money efficient, but group players may feel the sting a little bit here when they're specifically farming monsters for items. Now, there is actually some meat on the bone here for group players as well, we'll get to, but overall, I would say that the general feel of these scarabs is that it should be a net buff to solo players, with the potential for it being a buff to group players as well. We'll have to see how that ends up turning out. So yeah, I'm looking pretty happy with these breach changes. I would say that it's going to be beneficial, at least on your hands. You're probably not going to be clicking as many individual singular splinters, but you may be clicking a lot of larger stack sizes, which is what you want. Okay, with the scarabs out of the way, let's get in here and cover the big mechanical changes. So breaches have also got a pretty big rework here. You will see here that the pacing of breaches has been adjusted, as well as the density of breaches. So before, breaches were very, very slow unless you took the flash breach notable on the tree, which was incredibly powerful. You can see here the old flash breach made breaches open and close 50% faster. This is basically baseline now from what I can see, and the flash breach node has been basically reduced in power substantially because most of its power got transferred to the base play-to-play breach. Now, in addition to that, though, if you are a little bit worried and flash breach was too harder for you, they do have a new node called heavy breach, which makes it so the breaches open and close 30% slower as well. So not to worry there, you can kind of repair that if you are a little bit worried. But overall, this is just going to make breach feel a lot smoother for non-pure breach strategies, which just put the breaches in the maps for monsters. This is massive quality of life. In addition to that, it also sounds like they've upped the density and the consistency of breaches in terms of their monsters overall, so it should feel way, way better across the board. So you're going to be getting way more bang for your buck in each breach that you actually do open, which is really, really nice. We can also see that the number of breach splinters dropped is now affected by increases and reductions to item quantity. Now, there could be two possible outcomes from this. The first outcome is that it's only affected by the map quantity on the map. So stuff like sack frags, rolling your map, Eldritch altars, that increases the quantity of splinters. And that would make sense because breach hands are, not killable. You cannot destroy them. They are kind of in the map. They exist within the map. The second option here is that it's affected by all increases and reductions to quantity, which would include group quantity, as well as magic find. Now, if I had to pick which one it's probably going to be, I would probably say it's going to be the first one. I doubt that they would allow group players to, crush the breachstone economy quite so much, but let's discuss both options. First and foremost, the option one, where it increases based on the map quantity, as well as scaling with all that other good stuff. So basically, breach now does seem to be a mechanic which you can juice. So picking up stuff like increased item quantity on the tree, and picking up, like rolling your maps pretty hard with Chisel, Alk, and Val, using sack frags, going for the top hat on the Atlas passive tree to get all the increased effect of map nodes here. This is all going to be outstanding and recommended to do in breach strategies, because it's going to increase the amount of splinters that you get overall from the breach hands, from the bosses, from everything. And then again, if you're using those gilded scarabs, that'll all be duplicated on top of that. You get those extra hands as well. I can definitely see things going pretty crazily. But the thing to ask is, how many breach splinters do you get baseline? If you get half the amount and then you only have to increase it, it'll be basically the same. But if you can really get crazy with it, then I imagine we're going to see some pretty big potential here for quite a lot of breach stones, which would be very exciting. Now, the cool thing about this is, again, it should increase the stack sizes of the splinters. So you might not be getting as many breaches, but you'll be getting more splinters, hopefully, in the lower amount of breaches that you do have. And you're going to be getting more action in them as well. So big fan of that change. In the second kind of variation there, where it's affected by groups, this could potentially be interesting for people who do like to play in groups, but it could pretty much eliminate breach as an option for solo farming players. If it does scale with group quantity and with party quantity, and it is competitive for those groups to do, well, then they will do that, and they will basically dictate the price of all breach materials, and then basically the Chayula stones and stuff like that, because they're getting so many of them, they will be very cheap. And that will obviously overall affect the economy, and there'll be a lot of people who won't be getting as much for their breach materials. So we'll have to see how it plays. Option one is going to make breach substantially stronger, in my opinion, and from what I can see based on not having played it yet myself. But option two would probably make it a pretty cool strategy for group players, but ruin it for solo farming in terms of efficiency. But we'll have to see how it plays out, of course. Okay, so it does also say here the number of breach splinters dropped by breach bosses in your maps has been reduced. And overall, we've also got that reduction there to normal monsters, and I'm assuming it's also going to be to the breach hands. So a reduction across the board for breach splinters, but that makes sense because we have those new scarab modifiers, and because we also have the increases and reductions from quantity. Very good there. We've also got some removals of all of the in-between rarities, like pure, encharged, enriched, breach stones. They're all gone. Now you only have normal and flawless, and you can upgrade normal to flawless with a breach blessing. blessing, vastly increasing the value of breach blessings. So overall, those are going to be worth quite a bit more because you can now get those flawless breach stones, which does drop the Ulnator's Vow, as well as having all the good juicy experience that comes along with those flawless breach stones. So overall, I would say that this increase in price of the blessings will have an impact on the price of breach stones, and it should increase their value overall, which is going to be pretty interesting in the long run. So very, very interested in that and keen to see how that impacts the overall endgame meta around the items in there, as well as the leveling, the power leveling meta, because breach stones in the past were one of the best ways to level. Now, unfortunately, due to this change, breach blessings can no longer drop in maps. You used to be able to get quite a good amount of them in a farming session. That is no longer the case. That node got removed, so a bit unfortunate there. You're basically not going to be getting them anymore. Now on the upside though, the node over here, which drops full breach stones, now has a chance to drop the breach stones still from the breach lords, which we'll be getting more of due to the fact you get more boss class hands. But it now actually has a chance, I believe it's 5%, to drop a flawless breach stone, which is pretty cool. So you got a 5% of a 10%. So, you know, I think it's like what, 0.5%? You know, okay, it's a chance. You could get it. It could be pretty cool. Not too bad there. But yeah, that's pretty interesting as well. Now, that's pretty much the bulk of the major changes to Breach. We do also see some minor changes to all the nodes to kind of rebalance everything around the new way in which the splinters drop, as well as the breaches spawn. But overall, I think that it's going to play out as follows. You're of course going to take all of the chance to spawn breach nodes. You're going to need to, because every breach is far more valuable than it has been in the past. You're also going to use the +1 breach compass, you know, awakened, or the Maven one as well, in I can't remember what it's called, elevated. Elevated is probably going to be even more valuable than it normally is because it gives you 2 instead of 1, but you're going to at least use the normal compass for +1 breach, and then you are absolutely going to want to guarantee either Ulnator or Chayula, and then you're probably going to want to be using a gilded breach scarab. That's going to give you a total of 3 breaches most likely, so you get 1 from the scarab, 1 or 2 from the compass, as well as you know, hopefully 1 naturally spawning, which, you know, you should be getting a good amount of the time. So it's going to be very similar to farming legions, but instead of legion splinters, you are going to be getting breach splinters, which could be pretty cool. And instead of currency and raw currency, you're going to be getting chosen divination cards, which, you know, you can turn into skin of the lords, which could be pretty cool as well. So overall, I expect they are trying to push breach into a more legion-like area scenario, and it does look like they are poised to succeed with that. If the breach stones end up being as valuable as they think they're going to be, and I think that there's a high possibility that will be true. Now, I do want to quickly touch on the fact that breach does obviously have quite a few very valuable uniques now, which are primarily focused on Chayula, but there are a few others here which have been buffed as well. So Poison SRS uses a sword which drops off of Chayula, and also many spellcasters use the Skin of the Lords and Skin of the Loyal, which we've been discussing so much. So I imagine that slaying Chayula for loot alone will probably be quite in demand. In addition to that, blessings are now also far more valuable, so I think we could see you know, quite a resurgence in breach farming and also breach prices, given all of the changes. In the end game, of course, we have also got the Magic Find and the Delirium, stuff like that. We wanted to discuss a little bit. I am not concerned at all for either of those mechanics, as we have seen improvements to stuff like Abyss, which should increase the consistency of those farming strategies anyway. And Breach, you'll probably will still use it, but it won't be the focal point as it is now. It'll probably more be Abyss, which you use with Delirium versus Breach. You'll just chuck that on there for a few extra monsters. But overall, I am pretty confident there should not be any downsides to these changes. It's just going to boil down to how profitable is Breach, and I don't think that it's really going to have any impact on the larger kind of economy in terms of other strategies. So that's pretty good. It would have been really awesome to see Kirak have Breach as well, you know, really test out the juice here. But it's fair to say I'm going to be doing a couple Breach strategies, and we're going to figure out what is the best. I might even post one on Maxroll before League Start goes out, basically giving you guys my thoughts on what might be best. But overall, looks good. Very excited. Can't wait to try out some Breach. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, cheers.